So welcome to the Cost of Doing Business series, workshop 1 on getting started in business. So I'm Kelly Brown from Business Tasmania, and I'm really pleased to be joined by Mikala Grosse from the Tasmanian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So we're collaborating and delivering this 6-part workshop series over May and June to really try and help as many businesses as possible across the community with the challenges that we may face operating a business and getting started and getting yourself set up properly. So there's a lot of variety in the online events coming up, and I will share that with you very shortly. So before I hand over to Mikala, I'd actually like to spend just a few minutes on Business Tasmania and what our service offers. And then I'd love for you to keep that in mind so you can follow up with us after the event and access the great free services that we offer. So I'm sharing my screen here, and I just want to highlight, so the Business Tasmania service, it's a service delivered by the state government. It's offered all across Tasmania, and it's available to you from that very early dreaming stage. You're not sure if your idea, there's a market for it or if it's viable. So from that very early dreaming stage right through to running a business of any stage, you could be in business 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, across any industry. So you can come our way, contact the Business Tasmania team for anything at all business related. The Business Tasmania team are very passionate about providing the very best solution to meet your needs. We love what we do, and we love helping as much as possible. We do many things, and today I'm only going to be able to share a few of those things. So please just get in touch so we can get to know you and we can talk to you more about what's relevant right now. So we provide a lot of connections and access to different parts of state government and also the Australian government, who we really, we have our finger on the pulse of what's on offer. We run events face-to-face and online, and we collaborate with great partners like the TCCI we're here with today. We have excellent business advisors who I'll talk a little more about very shortly. Information and tools. We have so much of that on our Business Tasmania website. You'll see the web address shortly, including we have a fantastic new updated website with a grants and funding finder. So we're across any state, local or Australian government funding opportunities on our website, or you can call our Business Tasmania team. But in addition to that, we have tools that any tool you could really imagine that you need to run a business efficiently. So today you're going to hear great things from Mikala and tips and tricks. And what you can do after today's session is you can then go and follow up with our free advice services. So if you're thinking of starting a business and you may not have an Australian business number yet, or you're new to business with an Australian business number, which is less than 12 months old, you can access up to 2 hours of free advice to get you started. In each financial year. So it's May, you could access a couple of hours now, and then from 1 July, you can then go on to access 2 more hours if your ABN is still young, so to speak. Once your Australian business number is 12 months old or more, you can then go on to access 5 hours of free advice each financial year. And the sessions are all about what you need at that time. They can be tailored to, you might have an exciting new idea, you might be having a cash flow problem, you might want a sounding board, someone to talk to about your strategy or where you're at in your business. So the business advisors are all around the state. You can go to the Business Advice website and select the advisor that you think is a good fit for you. Or you can call the Business Tasmania team and they can arrange for an advisor to get in contact with you to meet. So the QR code there can be used as well. So it's an excellent service that you can use about anything Mikala covers today, but also any other aspect of running a business they can assist you with. As I mentioned, we run events. We have an event calendar through the web address there or the QR code, and it's available through the Business Tasmania website. I'd like to highlight a couple of events coming up which are very relevant. So if you're running a hospitality business, we have an event coming up on the 19th and 20th of May. It's actually the same event, but it's giving people in that industry more options to join in. And this one's all around looking at your cash flow, looking at your costs, and making sure that you're as best equipped as possible to meet the demands currently with pricing. Increased costs, people cutting back on their discretionary spending, interest rates are higher. So this one is really a great event if you're in a hospitality business. So encourage you to have a look at that. And in the rest of the Cost of Doing Business series, we have 5 more fantastic events coming up. Great topics that we've actually worked with the TCCI to develop excellent tips and tricks on all of these topics. And these are based on different inquiries that the Business Tasmania team has handled in the last year. So these are really topics that we think would really help you right now with running your business. So again, if you go to our event calendar, you can book in, they are no cost. So please encourage you to make that time to participate and learn more and get together with us again. So there are many ways that you can connect with the Business Tasmania service. So please keep us in mind. There are many, many more things that we offer than what I've just covered now. But what I'd like to do is for us to spend the rest of the time on what Mikala would like to cover through the session. So at that point, I'll stop sharing my screen and hand over to Mikala.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Can you see my screen there?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll just bring up a prompt page. There we go. Sorry, everyone, that slide is a little bit blurry, but that's because I took a screenshot. So I promise the rest will be better quality. So hopefully now you've all received your Getting Started in Business matrix. This is what we're going to be working through in today's session. And what I want you to do is use this as a tool to capture your thoughts and also to identify some holes potentially that you have in looking at setting up your business, and also to look at different ways that you can engage with the business advice service to get the support that you need to complete this matrix. And just a little hot tip, if you complete this matrix, you can then use this to populate a business plan. So it's sort of a really simplified version of a business plan. So if you've ever felt that a business plan feels too daunting, hopefully by the time we finish this matrix today, you'll feel a lot less so. All right, so the first box on that matrix is all about your why. And the questions here are around, why have you decided to start a business? Are your reasons compelling? Are you well supported in doing that? So when you're thinking about the support, do you have the support around you that you need? If you have young children at home, do you have the support in looking after the children? Because starting a business is really demanding on your time and attention. So it's really important that it's not just thinking about the business itself, you have to think about everything that wraps around that. And there's some things to look out for too when starting a business from a psychosocial standpoint. So things that people have indicated they struggle with are feelings of loneliness and isolation, because when you're in a workplace, you've got lots of people around you going through the same thing. But often when you're starting a business, if you haven't tapped into networking groups, then you can feel like you're going it alone. The lack of financial security, that can be a really big stressor, especially when you're starting out. And also unclear definition of work and role boundaries. So, often our businesses can kind of bleed into our private time. We're not quite sure what we're doing because we're trying to do everything to start with. So all of these things can actually have an impact on our mental health. You want to also look at things like, what is your time frame? So if you're starting a business as a side hustle, what have you got in your mind as to where the point is that you'll be able to step out of it? Are you thinking that you want to do it in 12 months? Is that a realistic expectation? Like, you really need to think about all these things. And just on the psychosocial hazards part that I mentioned, the Managing Emerging Workers' Compensation Risks webinar that Kelly mentioned on the 23rd of June, I'm actually going to be digging into that a lot more about psychosocial hazards and how to essentially reduce the risk of these issues escalating into more serious wellbeing problems for both business owners and staff. So if you kind of looked at that title and thought, oh no, that's not really for me, I would really suggest you come along and look at that, because those things affect sole traders and business owners just as much as they affect their teams. So the reason why it's important to have a really strong why is because business is really, really up and down. Like, you know, this is day in the life of an entrepreneur. This is on a good day. I went to a business conference earlier this year up in Devonport, and one of the speakers, she's got a very successful business. She's got a product that is on the shelves in Woolworths. And she mentioned how she even goes through periods like this now. You know, 10 years on, she's got a team working for her. It's a multi-million-dollar business, but she still goes through the same thing. So really understanding your why, making sure you've got those supports in place is so important. So as we go through, make sure you jot down a few things about your why, about the supports that you do have in place or might need in place, some considerations you might have. You know, do you need to connect with some other business owners through networking so you have a bit of a support network around you? So I'm going to keep moving through because we do have a lot to cover in the time. But the idea again is that I'm giving you some information so you can get started on your matrix, and then you can take it away and work more on it after the session. So the second box we have is about your customer. So this is about who you're serving. Now, we've got some service-based businesses, I've noticed, and some product-based businesses. It's really important to know who it is that you're trying to attract to your business. You want to know where you will find them. Some important things to really think about is, are they willing and able to pay for your product or service? So when you're first starting out with your business idea, it's all well and good to have this fabulous idea that you think people will love, but the willing and able part is really, really important. So I've worked with businesses that have provided services for busy families, for example, you know, helping mothers to declutter the home and keep things in order. Now, the challenge that those people have found is that, you know, they set the busy mothers as their customer avatar, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the challenges there are, if they're busy mothers, if they're stay-at-home mums, does their household have a single income? Do they have the money to be able to pay a consultant's fee? If people don't have the money to be able to pay you the price that you need in order to keep your business running, then they're probably not your ideal client. So it's really, really important to dig into this. They need to be willing. So that means they need to love your product and service and think it's of value to them. But the able part is really, really important. And things that you need to do is undertake some target market research and create an ICA, or an ideal client avatar. And I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment. But people tend to get a bit caught up in this having an ideal client avatar or having a specific customer. But I can tell you that specificity is really, really important. An example I like to give is, if you remember sort of back in the day a little bit, where we used to have trade tables in shopping centres. They do tend to pop up a bit now around Christmas time and special times of the year, but they used to be really, really common. And if you were to imagine someone standing at a trade table outside Woolworths in a shopping centre, and they're they've got signs up all around them and they're saying black swimsuits for sale. We're selling black swimsuits. You'd probably find in that situation that people are just going to walk straight past. Why? Because you can get a black swimsuit anywhere. You can walk into Kmart and probably pick one up for $5. Like, there's no interest, there's no hook, there's no what's in it for me. But if someone were to stand at that table and they had a very specific product for a very specific customer and said that they were selling black swimsuits for pregnant mothers of toddlers, suddenly all the people that walk past who are pregnant, are mothers of toddlers, are parents or friends or siblings of either pregnant people or mothers with toddlers or even fathers with toddlers, suddenly all of those people's attention has been caught to some degree. So that's the importance of specificity. You don't just want to sell a black swimsuit, you want to sell a specific black swimsuit to a specific customer set. Another example is I went to a Mother's Day market on Sunday, and again, this market actually happens quite often, but they'd asked the stallholders to be really specific in what products they put out, so really specific to Mother's Day. And so I went along and I had a walk through, and while I didn't pick up any products for myself, I did get some products. Like, my daughter's going away overseas soon, and I found some beautiful things for her, and I found a thing for a friend, and, you know, attracting the people into that market who are going to appreciate the product, who aren't just mothers or, you know, children, but are going to appreciate the product that's on offer, is the really important thing. So again, that's why specificity is so important. So when you're talking about an ideal client avatar, the thing that you want to really think about are, what are their wants and needs? So, you know, if we go back to the swimsuit example, a pregnant woman is going to need, you know, spandex in certain areas of a swimsuit. They might want a small skirt or something. They'd need good support over the shoulders. What do these people need from your product? What do they want from your product? What are the problems that they're facing? So again, the more specific you can get in your client, the more you can delve into the problems that they have. We had someone talking about setting up a rural pharmacy. What are the challenges that people have in your area? What are the products that they can't easily access that might be relevant specifically to you as a pharmacy? But pharmacies also have gift, you know, areas and other things. What other things could you potentially have in your store that can't be easily accessed in your area? You know, thinking really holistically. You want to think about demographics, age, gender, education, location, all that sort of stuff. Because then again, with education, income levels, can they afford your products? What can and can't they afford? You need to think about that. Their buying habits. Do they tend to buy online? Are they going to go into the city or into your store to buy instead? And there's lots of other things that you can think about when putting together an ideal client avatar. And Business Tasmania have tools and advice on that on their website. So don't be afraid to jump on their website and have a look, or just Google that to learn some more. And if you're doing some research on who your client avatar is, it's great to jump into places like Facebook groups. So again, with the pharmacy or the Pilates studio, jump into some Facebook groups about your local area. Find out what people are talking about, what their challenges are, what their needs are, and how with your product or service you might be able to address those.
Mikala, I have a question
Yes.
from one of the attendees. It's a great
Yes.
one. Would you only niche down to 1 to 2 target audiences rather than 4 to 5 niches for a service-based business?
Absolutely. And yes, because again, it's, if you're speaking a really wide, broad language with a wide, broad offering, like a black swimsuit, no one's going to hear you. The more specific you get, the more you're going to attract people's attention. And one of the key things that I come up against a lot in this is people push back and go, but I don't want to, cut out a whole group of people. For example, if you were to state, I mean, this is probably not quite politically correct anymore, but if you were to state that you only served women in your service-based business, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have men come to you. You're not going to have men hear your offering and hear what you've got and think that's what I need and come to you. Like if you say only women, that might be a case. But if you say you work mainly with women, then you're speaking that language and other people can hear it, like you may have a man come to you because his wife heard it or his partner or his daughter or some woman around him heard about your product and service, really connected with your message and went, hey, you need to get along and access this.
Thank you.
That answers the question?
I think so, but I'll keep an eye on the chat.
No problem. And also the more avatars that you have and the more niches that you have, the more work you have to do. Like it's really hard to speak to a whole lot of different audiences on one website. Some people will try and do that and try and give a whole lot of different services or a whole lot of different products to a whole lot of different people, but you're using different languages. One example I was going to use further on, but I'll mention it now. If you're talking to a 14-year-old girl who lives in New York, the language and the concepts and the things that you're going to use, as opposed to a 60-year-old man living in the Amazon rainforest, just to be really extreme, they're going to have very different languages, not just linguistically, but the concepts they use, the terms that they use. So you can't speak, as much as people try, you can't speak to such a broad range of people, because then you're falling back into the black swimsuit category and it can be a problem. All right, so the next box is about the problem. So every business solves a problem. So the thing that you need to clarify is what problem does your customer have that your product or service solves, and how would they describe it? So again, that's why it's important to know who you're talking to. This is where I normally give the example of the young girl and the older man. If you can't verbalize the problem clearly, then they're not going to be able to understand it. They're not going to know what the problem is, what the value of your product or service is to them. So the things that you need, or one very important thing that you need to consider in this, and I've seen this come up a few times too, is will your product or service provide a solution to an identified problem, so a problem that everyone knows they have, or will it create a solution to a problem people didn't know they had? So this becomes tricky when people have this great thing, they've had this idea, they've put a whole business, created a whole business idea around it, and then they go out to market and no one connects with what they're offering, because they're offering a solution to a problem that people either didn't know was a problem, or it's not really a problem. It's not something that would motivate them to go out and find a solution. So in that case, if you find yourself in that space, the challenge that you have is you're going to have to work twice as hard with your marketing to sell the problem as a problem before you're able to sell your product or service as a solution. So again, this is why your market research is so important before you start. Get into those groups, find out what the challenges and the problems are that your ideal client has, and then look at, does your product or service meet that? And if not, you may need to go back to the drawing board. But this is a really important one to consider. I have seen people miss this and then put in all the work to try and educate on the problem and still get nowhere with their marketing. So that's a little tip for you. The next box we've got to look at is the competition. So this is essentially, the questions are, how is your customer currently solving the problem that they have? So what alternative solutions are already out there? And who are your competitors? So again, market research. Why is it so important to know your competitors? Because if you know who your competition is, you can get really clever and you can look at what's working for them. What products seem to be their best sellers? You know, if they've got an e-commerce store, often people will say best sellers, or if they've got newsletter lists, they'll tend to put their most popular products in those, in the newsletters they send out. You want to also look at what's worked in the past for them. You know, go back through their social media if they have it, have a look through their website. What competitions have they run that seem to get a lot of engagement? What do they do that they do well? And what you can then take from that is, where do your own business strengths lie? Or what can you do that's better than what they do? Now, the one thing that I do want to note before I just move on with the competitors is it is really important to get to know them really well at the start, but then you really want to run your own race. You don't want to get caught up in comparison. I've worked with some people who know their competitors really well and they're constantly on their social media and constantly looking at what they're doing. And what I find that tends to do is it stops you from having original ideas. It stops you from trying new things, because you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. You don't want to do that. You want to do it as research at the start, and do it sporadically throughout the time that you're in business. Just check in on what's going around you. You know, what's the marketplace doing at the moment? Where does some struggles seem to be coming up? But it's really, really important that you do run your own race. Don't get so involved in what others are doing that your business essentially starts looking like them. So the next box we've got on the matrix is your solution. So what do you offer your customer? And what I mean by that is, what tangible thing does your customer actually get from you? So some examples of this, you know, if you're a lawn maintenance person, it could be that people get neat, tidy lawns. If you make nice soaps and candles and all that sort of thing, it's organic, nice smelling soaps or candles. If you're an educator, it could be an online course. If you're a bookkeeper, it could be financial records that are compliantly maintained, because that's really important. If you're like a dietitian or even a Pilates instructor, it could be that what they get is informed experience, health or exercise advice. You might think that this is really obvious, but if you can't articulate what it is you're actually offering your customer, then you're obviously going to have a lot of trouble selling your product, or particularly your service. So you need to really dig into this and explain it in a way that is meaningful to them in as few words as possible. And when I go out to business expos or anything like that, where I'm likely to meet business owners, the first question I always ask them is, what do you do? And honestly, if people get past the first sort of sentence and they haven't told me what it is they do, I really struggle to stay engaged and focus on what they're saying. So it's really, really important that you are very clear on what it is that your solution is, what it is that you offer people. Then the next box we've got are the benefits. So this is the why. Why does your customer want your product or service? And these tend to be more intangible. So what intangible benefits does your customer receive? So these are sort of the appealing nice to haves. So if we go to some more examples, again, with the garden maintenance business, it might be like, for me, these top three are absolutely true of a garden maintenance business. I've always had someone do my lawns for me because I'm not a gardener. I love looking at a beautiful garden, but I am not a gardener. I struggle to keep houseplants alive. So for me, having a gardener gives me more time because I don't have to spend my weekends out pulling weeds or mowing the lawn. Less stress because looking out the window at the garden, I'm like, oh, the grass is getting long. Got to try and fit this in. I'm already so busy. And the peace of mind, like when I engage a gardener, they just come regularly. I don't have to think about it. They turn up and they email me an invoice. So it's that part of my life, my world, my home is taken care of with minimal effort from me. Like it's one of the things that I always do and always will do. Is it better health? Again, the Pilates instructor, the pharmacy even. Do you have staff or do you intend on having staff that have specific skills in certain areas? You know, do you have someone who's a naturopath or a dietitian who might work a day a week or something for you, or would you bring those in? So what is it that your pharmacy is really going to offer people? Is it entertainment? Is it education or self-improvement? Or I notice we have a copywriter here. Is it more sales? Is that what it is that you're hoping or you're wanting to offer to your ideal client? So make sure that you jot these things down as they come up and we go through these. So the next box we have is your point of difference. So this is about what gives you the edge over the other options or the competition. So we're kind of circling back a little bit here. Why are you or is your business the best person or business to provide this solution? And what makes your solution unique? So your point of difference can also be called your unique selling point or unique selling proposition. And essentially, it's what makes you, your product or service stand out in the market. So you want to look at things like, is it better? Or just, is it different? Or how is it different? Or how is it better? And I'm just going to mention here, like the Tasmanian brand mark, or, you know, having made in Tasmania on your website or on your product is really great for mainland or overseas markets. However, not so much on the Tasmanian market because like our market is saturated. You go to Salamanca markets on the weekend, everyone's made in Tasmania from Tasmanian produce and all of that thing. So if that's you, if that's where you're sitting, you really need to delve deeper. Is it your life experience that, you know, gives you the edge? For example, if I were to offer a training course, a public speaking training course, I have a background in dance and theatre. So that could be what would give my course the edge over the next person, you know, who might just have stood up in front of a lot of people in boardrooms or something like that. So what makes you different? What's the thing that just is a bit different, that differentiates you in the market from that other person? So the next box is channels. Now, when I talk about channels, what I mean is where will people hear about your product or service? So how will you connect with your customer? What you need to know or have an idea of is where do they hang out? What platforms are they on? And how can you build a subscriber list? So I'm going to come back to that one in just a moment. But to give you a few examples of what I mean here, I had a client a few years ago who sold these beautiful, they were called water spirals. They were essentially gorgeous want of a better term, sprinklers. And they made beautiful patterns. They were made of copper pipe. They looked beautiful just to look at when they were standing stationary, but when water flowed through them, they made all these amazing patterns and everything in the air in the garden. So they were very expensive, but they were absolutely beautiful. And she did a lot of work on Facebook and Instagram, trying to sell there. She had an e-commerce website set up, and she put so much time and effort into that and barely got any sales. The return on investment was not good at all. We got together and we worked with a copywriter, and she actually put an article in Town and Country magazine, like, a physical glossy magazine. And in doing that, she hit her target market. So essentially her target market, or her ideal client avatar, were people with a high disposable income and who had the time, firstly, to sit and read or could afford these expensive magazines, because I think they're like $30 or something now. They're not cheap. But they also have the time to sit and read and appreciate these magazines, and they have the money to invest in their gardens. So knowing that, again, it's really important. So for the people she was trying to connect with, she was looking in the wrong space. It's also, they tended to be more retired, and, older people tend to like, and this is a generalization, I realize, but it's a bit of trial and error and testing things, but they tend to appreciate having a magazine rather than flicking through something, a website online, for example. So that's how she hit her target market. I've also worked with a driving instructor. Again, he did the social media. He thought Facebook would be a great hit. Mothers of kids who were getting to the age when they were starting to drive tend to be a bit Gen X, tend to hang out more on Facebook. He thought he'd hit the gold mine. But again, no luck. He did not do well on social media. So what he started doing, he had his branding on the side of his car, and he'd go and park out the front of a high school at drop off and pick up times. And he'd stand there with his cards. And that is where he started to get the business from. He only wanted to offer lessons in a specific area because he was actually retired. This was sort of a, change of life business. And so parking out front of the high schools in the area, it was the perfect way to get him customers. And that's how his business really grew. So the part about the subscriber list, the thing that's really, really important to be aware of is when it comes to social media, you don't own your followers. You've probably seen in the media that, or you might have even heard of friends or colleagues that have had this happen. Facebook can shut down your Facebook page like that because you put 3 words together in a post that some bot went, that's offensive, or that breaches this guideline or whatever. And then you can go down the rabbit hole of, I've had clients who've spent 18 months and thousands of dollars trying to engage people to help them get their Facebook business pages back or their Instagram accounts back. And a number of them ended up giving up on it. So you do not own your social media followers, and you don't have any control over that. However, if you develop an email subscriber list, provided you do it properly, you do actually own those subscribers. So they're an asset for your business. If you sell your business, you can sell your subscriber list as an asset. If you were to change your business and pivot into something else, you are well within your rights to contact your subscribers and let them know what you're doing and what's happening and give them the opportunity to unsubscribe. But your subscriber list you own and you have control over. Just another quick thing on that, when it came to COVID, people who had an email subscriber list did so much better in communicating the COVID changes to their clients than the people who were just on social media, because social media suddenly filled up with all of these posts about people closing or changing the way they were doing business. Whereas an email, that lands in someone's inbox and they see your business name and they make the decision as to whether they're going to open it or not. But always, as much as you can, get people onto a subscriber list. Okay, the next box is distribution. So how does your product or service get to your customer, or how do they access it? What steps are involved, and who or what else do you need to engage? So if we're looking at what else could be involved, it could be manufacturers. And if you need manufacturers, are you going to go onshore or are you going to go offshore? Something to think about, because if you go offshore, that can involve a lot more people and a lot more trouble than if you were using an onshore, but it can be a lot cheaper, so it can be a good option. Do you want to use stockists, or are you going to have a bricks and mortar store? Are you going to have an e-commerce website? Packaging. It's really important to consider when you send something out to someone, you want it to arrive in as nice a state as possible. So you want it to look like it did when you put it in that box to send it. So, you might need to spend money on specific packaging. Again, the water spirals person that I worked with, she had a really hard time developing packaging that protected those water spirals. So she actually had to invest a lot of money in doing that at the front end. So something else to think about. Freight and delivery costs. Obviously, that's a really big thing at the moment. These can fluctuate when we're not in a fuel crisis. So it's something to consider, to factor in. Are you going to use Australia Post, or are you going to use a particular courier? Make sure you do your research there. If you're a consultant, or, in the case of our Pilates instructor, are you going to use booking software so people can book online? Payment processing platforms. If you've got an e-commerce website, or again, if you're a consultant or providing something online, you're going to need a payment processing platform. Some you have to pay for, some just take a percentage of the money coming through. You've got to do all your research on that. And if you're doing something like this, educating online, meeting with clients online, do you need webinar or video conferencing software? So these are just some examples. There's obviously a lot more depending on what your specific business is about, but you really need to think of all these things, because these are going to add to your startup and ongoing business costs, which we'll get to. So in the next box, we're looking at revenue. So how do you actually make money from your customer, and what different opportunities might be available? So when I'm talking about this, we're looking at upselling. Excuse me. Supermarkets have, all the chewing gum and chocolates at the cash register to try and encourage you just to spend that little bit more money just as you're on your way out. What can you do something like that? Whether you've got a bricks and mortar store or if you've got an e-commerce store, what can you package or bundle? Or can you offer tiered pricing on different products or services? And also, you need to ensure that your pricing of your products and services correctly take into consideration all of the factors involved. And we do have an upcoming webinar on this, the Setting the Right Price for Your Product or Service, on 30th of June. So if you're struggling with that, I highly recommend that you come along to that webinar as well. So the other thing to consider, I mentioned COVID before, is thinking outside the square with regards to your revenue. So the question I ask people is, if we had another pandemic, could your business still earn money? So you need to think about what different income streams could you add to your business in 2, 5 or 10 years' time to try and make it more resilient? Or how could you potentially expand your offerings in the future? So when you're thinking about these sorts of things, I want you to do a bit of blue sky thinking. What would happen if something happened to your health or your family situation changed? How could you pivot? What could you do instead? Again, with the pandemic, closing down cafes, what backup plan have you got if that were ever to happen again, so that you can still keep your business going, you can still keep paying your staff? Now, you don't have to take action on these ideas now, but it is really, really important to have some in your back pocket should the worst happen, but also when you're doing your future planning for your business, have some ideas about where you might like to go in the future. So the next box is your startup needs. So what one-off things do you need to get started? So when we're doing this, I want you to think in terms of money. So do you need a loan? Do you have enough money in the bank? Have you been putting money aside? What people you might need? Do you need an accountant to help you set up your business structure? Do you need a graphic designer? You might not. You might get away without it. Do you need an engineer if you're manufacturing something new or developing a particular product or an aid of some sort? Do you need a trademark or IP lawyer? Those guys can be expensive, but it's a good investment. Do you need a web developer, or can you do it on your own? Also, you need to think about what qualifications, permits, and licenses you might need. You know, some of these might be a one-off thing, some of these might have ongoing costs. So you need to think about in your first year, what do you need to get started? And I do want you to think, like, separate out your wants from your needs. What are the things that you really need to get started? Do you need to fit out a premises? Just on that note, we have an upcoming webinar on leasing a premises, which I would highly recommend you come to if you're going to have a bricks and mortar store. What costs are involved in these? These are the things you need to think about. And how much money will you need to make in order to break even on these costs before you start turning a profit? That's why this is important, because the next question is this doable for you? You might get to this point and that's the end of it. That's the end of your business idea. You might find that when you've looked at all the things we've covered so far and all of this, that it's actually not viable. And if that's where you get to, that's a really great thing. So the last thing you want to do is get yourself into financial trouble over starting a business. Now, I don't want to scare you off on that one. You know, there are business advisors that you can tap into to help you work through these things. And that's, again, why we're using this as a tool to start conversations that you need, or to identify the conversations that you need to have. But this is a really, really important one, and one that people often overlook. And the other one people often overlook is the ongoing costs. So this is looking at what ongoing needs are essential to you keeping your business going. So keeping the wheels turning, keeping the doors open, continuing to pay yourself or your staff. And again, we're coming back to essentials, not nice to haves. And these, because the nice to have things can really add up quickly over time, particularly if we're talking about different software things. But these are essentials. So again, think in terms of money, people, things, technology, activities, and you want to review this regularly to make sure things don't creep up. So an example, some of the things might be rent, if you've got a bricks and mortar premises. If you've also got a bricks and mortar premises, utilities, staffing costs, web hosting, if you've got a website, insurance premiums, software subscriptions, and license and permit renewals. So you have to get them in the first place, but then a lot of them need to continue to be renewed. Then the question becomes, how much will you need to earn each year in order just to keep the doors open before you start to do a profit? And again, the question becomes, is this doable for you? So where to from here? And that really depends on where you're up to in your business journey. So a couple of questions I've posed. Do you have the core skills and attributes you need to make your business a success? If not, what gaps do you need to fill? And where can you go to get advice on that? Business Tasmania is my big hint for you. Have you tested your product or service as a minimum viable product? So MVP is minimum viable product. And what that is the most basic version that allows you to validate your idea and obtain feedback with minimal effort and outlay. So the thing with this is if you do, well, you should, you really, really should test your product or service. So I guess it's not if, it's when you do test and seek feedback. The important thing to do, and again, this is why it was important to look at your ideal customer early on, is it's your ideal customer avatar or your ideal client group or target market are the people that you want testing and providing you feedback on your product or service, not your friends or family. A lot of people run into the challenge of asking their friends and family for their advice, getting them to try it, test it. But the thing is, these people love you and they want to support you. Well, for the most part, they love you and they want to support you. So they are not going to be looking at your product or service from the point of view that you need it looked at. So again, it's important to know who your ideal target market are and to use these people. And again, you can access them via Facebook groups, put out the call to your friends and family. But unless your friends and family do fall inside your target market, don't use them. I'd actually just recommend you don't use them at all because you really want the honest and useful feedback. And finally, as we said before, create a business plan. So use the information we've gone through. You'll see in any business plan template that what we've spoken about do fit into the particular boxes. And the note I've got about that is business plans are not one and done. They need to be reviewed and updated regularly. So Kelly was talking about how you get 5 hours every year once you've had your ABN for more than 12 months. Use that time every financial year. Make the most of it. Get together with an advisor. Go over, review your business plan. Talk about any challenges you might have. And that, my friends, is the end for me. So,
Fantastic.
Kel, do we have any questions?
Look, I'd welcome some questions coming through the chat or raising the virtual hand. That was so good, Mikala. Lots of great tips and tricks and lots for us all to think about. So feel free while we're sort of wrapping up to pose those questions. And also, if you would like one of the Business Tasmania team to give you a call today or tomorrow and connect you with one of the business advisors in the new business support service or the Tasmanian Business Advice Service, we can do that. And you can work on any one of the things that Mikala covered today, including the business plan or anything at all. They can work with you one-on-one, or it can be about something else not covered today. So by all means, please put your name that you registered in the chat, and no need for your contact details. We've got that, so I can give you a call. But what we might do shortly in a second is stop the recording, and we can actually then open it up to more questions. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us at the Cost of Doing Business series Workshop 1 on how to start a business. So thank you, everyone.